Hey everyone, this is Aaron from MTGChallengers and welcome to another Magic the Gathering highlights video. For today's matchup, we have me playing Jeskai Burn going up against Casey playing Mono Green Devotion. Casey won the die roll and started things off with a Forest and an Elvish Mystic. I laid down a Mountain and cast a Monastery Swiftspear. I swung with it for 1, Casey chose to take it, going to 19. Casey played a Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. He then cast a Sylvan Caryatid and passed the turn. I played a Mystic Monastery, which entered-tapped and passed it back. For his next turn, Casey just played a second Forest and resolved a second Elvish Mystic. I played another Mountain and cast another Swiftspear. I then killed one of Casey's Elvish Mystics with a Searing Blood. This dealt 3 damage to him and also triggered the Prowess ability on my Swiftspears, giving each of them +1/+1. I then swung with them both for 4. Casey blocked one with his Caryatid and took the other 2, going to 14. Casey just cast another Elvish Mystic and ended his turn. I played a second Mystic Monastery and resolved a Goblin Rabblemaster. I entered combat, which got me a 1/1 Goblin token with haste. I then swung out with everything I could. Casey blocked one of the Swiftspears with his Caryatid again and took 2 more damage, going to 12. On his next turn, he cast a Genesis Hydra for 4, getting him a 4/4 creature and letting him reveal the top 4 cards of his library. Apollochronos World Eater was among them, allowing him to put it onto the battlefield and shuffled the rest back into his library. I played another Mountain and cast a second Rabblemaster, getting myself 2 more Goblins at combat. I then swung with everything but the Rabblemaster with Summoning Sickness and one of my Swiftspears for a total of 9. Casey threw his Hydra in front of my 5/2 Rabblemaster, killing both of them. He blocked and killed the attacking Swiftspear with Apollochronos and took the remaining 3, going down to 9. In post-combat, I was able to convoke a Stoke the Flames, finishing off Apollochronos. On his next turn, Casey activated Nykthos, giving him 3 green mana. He then played a second Nykthos as his land for turn, sacrificing the tapped one and activated again, which gave him 4 mana total after the cost of the second activation. He tapped his 3 mana dorks, giving him the 7 mana he needed to cast a Court of Calling for 4. This allowed him to fetch up a Courser of Kruphix and put it onto the battlefield. Unfortunately for Casey, I had another Stoke the Flames in my hand, which I used to kill the Courser. This left Casey's field completely open, allowing me to swing in for lethal, giving me the win and taking us to Game 2. Welcome to Game 2. Casey took the play again and led off with a Forest. I played a Mountain and cast a Monastery Swiftspear and took Casey to 19. Casey just played a second Forest and passed it back. I laid down a Shivan Reef and cast a Lightning Strike, dealing 3 damage to Casey. This triggered the Swiftspear's Prowess ability, allowing me to hit for another 2 damage, dropping Casey to 14. Casey just played a Forest and passed again. I missed my land drop, so I just poked him for 1, taking him to 13. Casey played a Nykthos Shrine to Nyx as his land for turn. He then cast a Courser of Kruphix, revealing a Forest. I played a second Shivan Reef and resolved a Goblin Rabblemaster. I then entered combat, getting me a 1/1 Goblin token with haste. It had to attack, so I sent the Swiftspear along with it. Casey chose to take both points of damage, going to 11. He went back up to 12 on his next turn by playing a Forest from the top of his library. I played a second Rabblemaster, getting 2 more 1/1 Goblins. I then swung with everything I could for a total of 9. In response, Casey tapped all of his lands and convoked with his Courser a Court of Calling for 3, allowing him to search up another Courser. He blocked and killed my Swiftspear with it and took the remaining 8 damage, going down to 4. Casey played another Forest from the top, going up to 6 due to the 2 Coursers. He then activated Nykthos for 4 mana, tapped his remaining 3 Forests, and cast a Hornet Queen. When the Queen entered, it got him 4 1/1 insect tokens with Flying and Death Touch. I laid down a Mystic Monastery as my land for turn. I entered combat, getting 2 more Goblins. Since I had 2 Rabblmasters in play, all Goblins were required to attack for a total of 21 damage. Casey traded the 2 Rabblmasters with 2 of his Death Touch tokens. He put the remaining 2 tokens along with his 2 Coursers up against 4 of the Goblin tokens. As a result, all creatures but the Coursers died and a Goblin token got through for 1, taking Casey to 5. On his next turn, he activated Nykthos and tapped the rest of his lands for a total of 10 mana, used 3 of it to cast a third Courser. He then played a Forest, gaining him 3 life, going up to 8. This left him 7 mana in the pool. He brought it up to 8 with the Forest he just played and cast a Genesis Hydra for 6. Of the top 6 cards, he chose to put a Nylea's Disciple onto the battlefield. The Hydra was still on the stack, so Casey gained 11 life, going up to 19. I decided to counter the Hydra with a Disdainful Stroke, costing me a life for my Reef. For combat, he swung with the 3 creatures that didn't have summoning sickness for a total of 6, taking me to 13. I just drew and passed for my next turn. Casey drew and cast his 4th Courser of Krufix on his next turn. He then played a Forest, going up to 23. For combat, he swung with 2 Coursers and his Disciple for a total of 7. I chumped the Disciple with my remaining Goblin token and took 4, going to 9. At the end of his turn, I cast a Magma Jet, killing the Hornet Queen and allowing me to scry 2. It didn't give me any answers though, and with 4 Coursers in play, I decided that the game was just too far gone, so I scooped it up, giving Casey the win and taking us to Game 3. Welcome to Game 3. I took a mulligan down to 6 cards and was on the play. I played a Mana Confluence, paying 1 life for it, and cast a Monastery Swiftspear. I poked Casey for 1 and passed it back. Casey laid down a Forest and played an Elvish Mystic. I played a second Mana Confluence. I then went to 17 to kill Casey's Mystic with a Searing Blood. This dealt 3 damage to him and pumped my Swiftspear, allowing me to swing in for another 2 damage, dropping Casey to 14. He played a second Forest and cast a Sylvan Caryatid. I just drew and passed, stuck on 2 lands. Casey resolved a Courser of Krufix. He then played a third Forest, going to 15. I just played a Mountain and passed it back. Casey cast a Polykranos World Eater, but I countered it with a Disdainful Stroke, going to 16. For combat, he swung with his Courser for 2, which I chose to take. I cast a Mantis Rider on my next turn, costing me another 2 life, going down to 12. I then swung with my team for 4 damage, dropping Casey to 11. He played a Forest from the top, going up to 12. He then cast a second Polykranos, which resolved this time. I swung with both of my creatures on my next turn again. Casey blocked the Swiftspear with his Caryatid and had no blockers for the Rider. Before damage, I paid another 2 life for my lands and cast a Jeskai Charm, giving my creatures +1/+1 in lifelink. This also triggered Prowess on the Swiftspear, bringing it up to 3 power, allowing it to kill the Caryatid, blocking it. The Rider flew over for 4, taking Casey down to 8, and I gained 7 life from the lifelink, going to 17. Casey gained 6 life on his next turn by resolving a Nylea's Disciple, going to 14. He then played another Forest from the top, gaining another life. He swung with Polykranos at me for 5, which I chose to take. I drew my card for turn and went straight to combat, flying over with my Rider for another 3 damage, tying us up at 12. Casey resolved a second Courser of Krufix. He then played a Nykthos Shrine to Nyx as his land for turn, going to 14. At the end of his turn, I cast a Magma Jet targeting Casey, costing me another life and taking him back down to 12. I got to scry 2 from it. I chose to keep the 2 on top and rearrange them. I played a Shivan Reef. I then flew over with my Rider again, taking Casey to 9. At the end of my turn, Casey activated Nykthos for 8 and convoked with Polykranos and one of his Coursers to cast a Chord of Calling for 7, fetching up a Hornet Queen. This got him 4 1/1 insects with Flying and Death Touch. Before Casey moved to his turn, I went to 10 to kill the Hornet Queen with a Searing Blood. This also dealt 3 damage to Casey, taking him to 6. Unfortunately for me, Casey was able to produce 11 mana on his next turn, which is exactly enough for him to Monstrous Polykranos for 5, killing all of my creatures. This left my board wide open for a lethal attack, so I went ahead and conceded, giving Casey the win to the game and the match. So that's it for these highlights. If you enjoyed them, feel free to check out the full gameplay as well as the commentary. To see the lists for these decks and others, be sure to check out our deck techs and like our Facebook page for announcements, updates, and other behind-the-scenes information. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, subscribe for more Magic the Gathering content.